We are live, and today I think I asked ChatGPT to just give me. I have set up this task. I have asked ChatGPT to every single day now give me some interesting topics that we can dive deep into. And today's topic is, or there were a bunch of options. The one I'm interested in is the simulation hypotheses. By the way, look at what happened over here. I think Grok has done some just fancy design over here. It looks beautiful. The simulation hypotheses. And let's also see if Perplexity can give us some images. Alright. Seems like you're referring to the simulation hypotheses. I'll assume you want an explanation of this concept. Let me know if you had something more specific in mind. Philosophical idea popularized by Nick Bostrom in his 2003 paper, Are You Living in a Computer Simulation? It proposes that at least one of the following statements is true. Almost all civilizations at our level of technological development go extinct before they become technologically mature. Hmm. Wow. Almost all civilizations at our level of technological development go extinct before they become technologically mature. We keep talking about this because we would like look at some civilization, we will look at like how they used to do some things, and we're like, wow, how is this possible? How did they manage to do this without the smartphones and the TikTok we have today, and the Twitter we have today? And if they were that smart, what happened? So this is very interesting. The fraction of technologically mature civilizations that are interested in running simulations of beings with their historical past is almost zero. We are almost certainly living in a computer simulation. The fraction of technologically mature civilizations that are interested in running simulations of beings with their historical past is almost zero. I don't know what that means. In simpler terms, it suggests that if advanced civilizations can create highly realistic simulations of reality, think super advanced video games or virtual worlds, and they choose to run many such simulations, then the odds are overwhelming that we are not in the base reality, but rather one of the countless simulated realities. If advanced civilizations can create highly realistic simulations of reality, think super advanced video games or virtual worlds, and they choose to run many such simulations, then the odds are overwhelmingly that we are not in the base reality, but rather one of the countless simulated realities. Bostrom's argument hinges on the idea that a sufficiently advanced civilization could simulate entire universes complete with conscious beings who don't know they're simulated. Oh, very interesting. So now I kind of get the, yeah, first didn't understand the second point clearly. Obviously, this is a confusing statement, but now I understand. So it's like either all the civilizations at our level of technological development go extinct before they become technologically mature, or they become so good that they can create simulations. The fraction of technologically mature civilizations that are interested in running simulations of beings with a historical past. Actually, I don't understand the second part. Interested in running simulations of beings with their historical past is almost zero. We're almost certainly living in a computer simulation. It suggests that if advanced civilizations can create highly realistic simulations of reality, think super advanced video games or virtual worlds, and they choose to run many such simulations, then the odds are overwhelmingly that we are not in the base reality, but rather one of the countless simulated realities. Bostrom's argument hinges on the idea that a sufficiently advanced civilization could simulate entire universes, complete with conscious beings who don't know they are simulated. The reasoning goes like this: if there is even one base reality that spawns billions of simulations, the sheer number of simulated realities would vastly outnumber the single real one. So, statistically, we are more likely to be in a simulation than not. If there is even one base reality that spawns billions of simulations, the sheer number of simulated realities would vastly outnumber the single real one. So statistically, we are more likely to be in a simulation than not, unless advanced civilizations never get to that point due to extinction, or just don't bother simulating conscious beings. If there is even one base reality that spawns billions of simulations, the sheer number of simulated realities would vastly outnumber the single real one. So, statistically, we are more likely to be in a simulation than not, unless advanced civilizations never get to that point due to extinction, or just don't bother simulating conscious beings. This is exactly what happens when you cover all your basic needs. When in all the countries, in all the, let's say, societies where people cover their basic needs, they've covered their essentials. Now what they think about is bigger ideas, and in those bigger ideas, either they could go crazy, or actually crazy on both the sides. They can go crazy good, crazy bad. Crazy good would be something like Elon Musk. Like now he's like thinking bigger and bigger, and he's like, okay, how do we go to Mars? How do we build rockets? How do we build these crazy technological uh, tools that could help us do really futuristic thing? Or you could just go crazy on the bad side. It's a mind-bending concept with no definitive proof. Either way, some point to the rapid progress in computing like virtual reality or AI as hints that we could eventually create such simulations ourselves, lending credence to the idea. Others argue it's untestable and more of a thought experiment than a scientific theory. For example, physicist Sabine Hausenfelder has critiqued it as a fun idea that's hard to falsify, while Elon Musk has famously said it's likely we are in a simulation because the universe seems too finely tuned. Too finely tuned. Wow. Interesting. Elon Musk's thoughts on simulation hypotheses. Search for images. Let's see. Simulation hypotheses. Actually, first read one. They have basic premise. The hypothesis posits that our reality, including the universe and everything in it, could be sophisticated simulation similar to a highly advanced video game. This raises questions about the nature of consciousness and free will if we are simulated beings. Nick Bostrom's argument. Philosophers' simulation argument suggests that if advanced civilizations are capable of running simulations of conscious beings, it's likely that there are more simulated conscious beings than real ones. This leads to the conclusion that we might be living in a simulation. Key concepts and debates. There are two main scenarios proposed by the simulation hypotheses. The world is simulated, but humans are organic. Humans themselves are simulated constructs within the digital world. If we are living in a simulation, it could imply that our actions and decisions are predetermined by the simulation's programming, challenging the concept of free will. While current technology allows for realistic simulations of complex systems, creating a full scale simulation of reality poses significant challenges in terms of complexity and scale. The simulation hypothesis is sometimes linked to concepts in quantum mechanics, such as the many worlds interpretation and the technological singularity, where AI surpasses human intelligence. Probability and evidence, Bayesian analysis. Astronomer David Kipping used Bayesian reasoning to assess the probability of living in a simulation, concluding that the odds are roughly 50-50, though slightly favoring the idea that we are in a Bayes reality. Bostrom's trilemma. Bostrom's argument presents three possibilities. Civilizations cannot simulate reality, they choose not to. Argument presents three possibilities. Civilizations cannot simulate reality, they choose not to, or we are likely living in a simulation. He suggests that one of these must be true but does not argue for which one is most likely. Civilizations cannot simulate reality, they choose not to, or we are likely living in a simulation. He suggests that one of these must be true but does not argue for which one is most likely. Remains a speculative idea, sparking interesting philosophical and scientific discussions about the nature of reality and consciousness. While it is intriguing, It lacks concrete evidence and remains a topic of debate among scholars and scientists. Our actions and decisions are predetermined by the simulation's programming, challenging the concept of free will. While current technology allows for realistic simulations of complex systems, creating a full scale simulation of reality poses significant challenges in terms of complexity and scale. Quantum mechanics and singularity. Concepts in quantum mechanics, such as the many worlds interpretation and the technological singularity, where AI surpasses human intelligence. AI surpasses human intelligence. Let's check out this one. The big thing. Why the simulation hypothesis is pseudoscience. Okay. I quite like the idea that we live in a computer simulation gives me hope that things will be better on the next level. Unfortunately, the idea is unscientific. But why do some people believe in simulation hypotheses, and just exactly what's the problem with it? That's what we will talk about today. According to the simulation hypothesis, everything we experience was coded by an intelligent being, and we are part of that computer code. That we live in some kind of computation in and by itself is not unscientific. For all we currently know, the laws of nature are mathematical. So you could say the universe is really just computing those laws. You may find this terminology, bro, so much distraction. You may find this terminology a little weird, and I would agree, but it's not controversial. The controversial bit about the simulation hypothesis is that it assumes there is another level of reality where someone or something controls what we believe are the laws of nature or even interferes with those laws. The belief is an omniscient being that can interfere with the laws of nature, but for some reason remains hidden from us, is a common element of monotheistic religions. But those who believe in the simulation hypothesis argue they arrived at their belief by reason. Philosopher, for example, claims it's likely that we live in a computer simulation based on an argument that in a nutshell goes like this. If there are many civilizations, and these civilizations build computers that run simulations of conscious being, then there are many more simulated conscious beings than real ones, so you're likely to live in a simulation. Among those who have bought into it, he too said, it's most likely we are in a simulation. And even Neil deGrasse Tyson gave the simulation hypothesis better than 50-50 odds of being correct. Maybe you are now rolling your eyes because, come on, let the nerds have some fun, right? And sure, some parts of this conversation is just intellectual entertainment, but I don't think popularizing the simulation hypothesis is entirely innocent fun. It's mixing science with religion, which is generally a bad idea, and really, I think we have better things to worry about than that someone might pull the plug on us. I dare you. I have a general comment about the difference between religion and science. Take an example from Christian faith. Like Jesus healing the blind and lame, it's a religious story, but not because it's impossible to heal blind and lame people. One day we might be be able to do that. It's a religious story because it doesn't explain how the healing supposedly happens. The whole point is that the believers take it on faith, and science, in contrast, require explanations for how something works. There are many civilizations that run simulations of conscious beings, then you are likely to be simulated. First of all, it could be that one or both of the premises are wrong. Maybe there aren't any other civilizations, or they aren't interested in simulations. That wouldn't make the argument wrong, of course. It would just mean that the conclusion can be drawn. But I will leave aside the possibility that one of the premises is wrong, because really, I don't think we have good evidence for one side or the other. The point I have seen people criticize most frequently about Bostrom's argument is that he just assumes it is possible to simulate human-like consciousness. We don't actually know that this is possible. However, in this case, it would require an explanation to assume that it is not possible. That's because for all we currently know, consciousness is simply a property of certain systems that process large amounts of information. It doesn't really matter what physical basis this information processing is based on. Could be neurons, could be transistors, or it could be transistors believing they are neurons. So I don't think simulating consciousness is the problematic part. The problematic part of Bostrom's argument is that he assumes it is possible to reproduce all our observations using not the natural laws that physicists have confirmed to extremely high precision, but using a different underlying algorithm which the programmer is running. I don't think that's what Bostrom meant to do, but it's what he did. He implicitly claimed that it's easy to reproduce the foundations of physics with something else, but nobody presently knows how to reproduce general relativity and the standard model of particle physics from a computer algorithm running on some sort of machine. You can approximate the laws that we know with a computer simulation. We do this all the time, but if that was how nature actually worked, we could see the difference. Indeed, physicists have looked for signs. It's actually so crazy. Just a couple of days ago, we were doing the stream over here. The sun was shining, and the water was blue and so beautiful. And right now, it's just gray and gloomy. Wow. Wow. But if that was how much nature actually worked, we could see the difference. Indeed, physicists have looked for signs and natural laws really proceed step by step, like in a computer code, but their search has come up empty handed. It's possible to tell the difference because attempts to algorithmically reproduce natural laws are usually incompatible with the symmetries of Einstein's theories of special and general relativity. Relativity. I'll leave you a reference in the info below the video. The bottom line is it's not easy to outdo Einstein. It also doesn't help, by the way, if you assume that the simulation would run on a quantum computer. Quantum computers, as I have explained earlier, are special purpose machines. Nobody currently knows how to put general relativity on a quantum computer. A second issue with Bostrom's argument is that for it to work, a civilization needs to be able to simulate a lot of conscious beings. And these conscious beings will themselves try to simulate conscious beings and so on. This means you have to compress the information and that we think the universe contains. Bostrom therefore has to assume that it's somehow possible to not care much about the details in some parts of the world where no one is currently looking and just fill them in case someone looks. Again though, it doesn't explain how this is supposed to work. What kind of computer code can actually do that? What algorithm can identify conscious subsystems and their intention and then quickly fill in the required information without ever producing an observable inconsistency? That's a much more difficult issue than Bostrom seems to appreciate. You cannot in general just throw away physical processes on short distances and still get the long distances right. Climate models are an excellent example. We don't currently have the computational capacity to resolve distances below something like 10 kilometers or so. But you can't just throw away all the physics below the scale. This is a non-linear system, so the information from the short scales propagate up into large scales. And that's my issue with the simulation hypotheses. Those who believe it make maybe unknowingly really big assumptions about what natural laws can be reproduced with computer simulations, and they don't explain how this is supposed to work. But finding alternative explanations that match all our observations to high precision is really difficult. The simulation hypothesis therefore just isn't a serious scientific argument. This doesn't mean it's wrong, but it means you would have to believe it because you have faith, not because you have logic on your side. Okay, that's a good argument. I think even, yeah, I think even he would agree, Bostrom would agree, that he doesn't know how to explain exactly the concept of free will, let's say. Okay, did you find for the original paper? 15 sources. Where's the original paper? Okay, let's see Elon Musk first. Elon Musk has been one of the most prominent public figures to endorse the simulations hypotheses. Clearly fascinated by the idea and leans heavily towards the notion that we are likely living in a simulated reality. He often cites the rapid advancement of video games as a key piece of evidence. In a 2016 interview at Recode's Code conference, he famously pointed out that 40 years ago we had Pong, two rectangles and a dot, while today we have photorealistic immersive games with millions of players. If you extrapolate that progress a few decades or centuries forward, he argues we could create simulations indistinguishable from reality. Given that trajectory, he suggests the odds that we are in base reality, that we are in base reality are 1 in billions. In other words, if countless simulations can exist, it's statistically improbable that we are in the original unsimulated version. He's also tied this to the Fermi paradox, the question of why we haven't seen signs of alien civilizations. In a 2018 appearance on Joe Rogan's podcast, he speculated that if we are in simulation, the lack of alien contact could be a feature of the program, like a boundary condition set by whoever is running it. He's not dogmatic about it though, he frames it as a possibility, not a certainty. Has a knack for blending his idea with his own ventures. He's hinted that his work with Neuralink merging human brains with AI and SpaceX expanding humanity beyond Earth. Could be ways to either break out of the simulation or ensure humanity reaches a level where it can create its own. He's posted things like if you assume any rate of improvement at all, then games will become indistinguishable from reality. That actually makes sense. That's logic. That's not a faith or belief. Because we have seen games go from ping pong to today Call of Duty or whatever. Or civilization will end. One of those two things will occur, reinforcing his view that the simulation scenario is almost inevitable unless progress halts. He doesn't get too bogged down in the philosophical weeds. His take is more pragmatic and tech focused. He's less interested in debating whether it's real and more in what it implies about technology and existence. For instance, in 2021, the universe is 13.8 billion years old. So any civilizations that's simulating us is probably only a few hundred years ahead. They are not gods, just better at coding. His stance sparked plenty of reactions. Some see it as bold, visionary take, others roll their eyes, calling it a sci fi distraction from a billionaire. Either way, it's classic Musk. Big ideas grounded in tech optimism with a dash of cosmic speculation. Uh, give me the give me link. Give me link to the original paper by Nick Bostrom. Okay. Wow. Are you living in a computer simulation and in just 14 pages? Wow. And he has an equation here. Where is the equation? Wow, he has an equation. This paper argues that at least one of the following propositions is true. The human species is very likely to go extinct before reaching a post-human stage. That's crazy. Everybody had a different description of it. This is the original one. The human species is very likely to go extinct before reaching a post-human stage. Any post-human civilization is extremely unlikely to run a significant number of simulations of their evolutionary history or variations thereof. We are almost certainly living in a computer simulation. Any post-human civilization is extremely unlikely to run a significant number of simulations of their evolutionary history. We are almost certainly living in a computer simulation. It follows that the belief that there is a significant chance that we will one day become post-humans who run ancestor simulations and is false unless we are currently living in a simulation. A number of other consequences of this result are also discussed. Many works of science fiction as well as some forecasts by serious technologists and futurologists predict that enormous amounts of computing power will be available in the future. Let us suppose for a moment that these predictions are correct. One thing that later generations might do with their super powerful computers is run detailed simulations of their four bears, or of people like their forebears, because their computers would be so powerful they could run a great many such simulations. Suppose that these simulated people are conscious, as they would be if the simulations were sufficiently fine grained, and if a certain quite widely accepted position in the philosophy of mind is correct, then it could be the case that the vast majority of minds like ours do not belong to the original race, but rather to people simulated by the advanced descendants of an original race. It is impossible to argue that if this were the case, we would be rational to think that we are likely among the simulated minds rather than among the original biological ones. If we don't think that we are currently living in a computer simulation, we are not entitled to believe that we will have descendants who will run lots of such simulations of their forebears. That is the basic idea. The rest of the paper will spell it out more carefully. Apart from the interest this thesis may hold for those who are engaged in futuristic speculation, there are also more purely theoretical rewards. The argument provides a stimulus for formulating some methodological and metaphysical questions, and it suggests naturalistic analogies to certain traditional religious conceptions, which some may find amusing or thought provoking. The structure of the paper is as follows. First, we formulated an assumption that we need to import from the philosophy of mind in order to get the argument started. Second, we consider some empirical reasons for thinking that running vastly many simulations of human minds would be within the capability of a future civilization that has developed many of those technologies that can already be shown to be compatible with known physical laws and engineering constraints. This part is not philosophically necessary, but it provides an incentive for paying attention to the rest. Then follows the core of the argument, which makes use of some simple probability theory and a section providing support for a weak indifference principle that the argument employs. Lastly, we discuss some interpretations of the disjunction mentioned in the abstract that forms the conclusion of the simulation argument. The assumption of substrate independence. A common assumption in the philosophy of mind is that of substrate independence. The idea is that mental states can supervene on any of a broad class of physical substrates, provided a system implements the right sort of computational structures and processes. It can be associated with the conscious experiences. It is not an essential property of consciousness that it is implemented on carbon based biological neural networks inside a cranium. Silicon based processors inside a computer could, in principle, do the trick as well. Arguments for this thesis have been given in the literature, and although it is not entirely uncontroversial, we shall here take it as a given. The argument we shall present does not, however, depend on any strong version of functionalism or computationalism. For example, we need not assume that the thesis of substrate independence is necessarily true, either analytically or metaphysically, just that, in fact, a computer running a suitable program would be conscious. Moreover, we need not assume that in order to create a mind on a computer, it would be sufficient to program it in such a way that it behaves like a human in all situations, including passing the Turing test, etc. We need only the weaker assumption that it would suffice for the generation of subjective experiences, that the computational processes of a human brain are structurally replicated in suitably fine grained details, such as on the level of individual synapses. This attenuated version of substrate independence is quite widely accepted. Neurotransmitters, nerve growth factors, and other chemicals that are smaller than a synapse clearly play a role in human cognition and learning. The substrate independence thesis is not that the effects of these chemicals are small or irrelevant, but rather that they affect subjective experience only via their direct or indirect influence on computational activities. For example, if there can be no difference in subjective experience without there also being a difference in synaptic discharges, then the requisite detail of simulation is at the synaptic level or higher. The technological limits of computation. At our current stage of technological development, we have neither sufficiently powerful hardware nor the requisite software to create conscious minds and computers. But persuasive arguments have been given to the effect that if technological progress continues unabated, then these shortcomings will eventually be overcome. Some authors argue that this stage may be only a few decades away, yet present purposes require no assumptions about the time scale. The simulation argument works equally well for those who think that it will take hundreds of thousands of years to reach a post-human stage of civilization where humankind has acquired most of the technological capabilities that one can currently show to be consistent with physical laws and with material and energy constraints. Such a mature stage of technological development will make it possible to convert planets and other astronomical resources into enormously powerful computers. It is currently hard to be confident in any upper bound on the computing power that may be available to post-human civilizations, as we are still lacking a theory of everything. We cannot rule out the possibility that novel physical phenomena not allowed for in current physical theories may be utilized to transcend those constraints that is in our current understanding, that in our current understanding impose theoretical limits on the information processing attainable in a given lump of matter. We can, with much greater confidence, establish lower bounds on post-human computation by assuming only mechanisms that are already understood. For example, actually, let's try a thing. A random idea popped in my mind. Clone a screenshot. What is this? Continue with reversal. Create a landing page that says are we, what is this called? Are you living in a computer simulation? Are you living in a simulation? Or am I living in a simulation? Create a button called Figure It Out for Yourself. Oh, that links to this PDF. Yeah, this is perfect. Sign up. Continue with Versal. Continue with, whoa, sign with MetaMask. Okay. Uh-oh. I will have to hide for a second and then I'll be back. I'm just signing up for Versal. Let's see, this might be cool. Okay, so I have signed in, and quickly let's see how Versal actually does this thing. Okay. Whoa, things are happening. Am I living in a simulation? Ooh. Update the text to am I living in a simulation? This is really cool, right? Yes. Update. Wow. Update the button text to actually figure it out for yourself. Wow, this is really cool. Need more messages? Get higher limits with premium. Update text to am I living in a simulation? Whoa, 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 whoa. So cool. So cool, right? And you click over here, it takes you to this PDF. Perfect. Perfect. Now, can we find a good photo? Can we find a good photo? Perplexity. Can we just steal from Perplexity? Perplexity has good stuff. Am I living in a simulation? Hey, Perplexity, just give me one of these photos. Can you give me one of these photos? The power of knowledge. How do I get these photos? Okay, let's see. Perplexity, I really like this one. Whoa, 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 whoa. I really like this one. But we don't know if we can access that. Ask questions, win big. Champions Trophy giveaway. Perplexity has definitely figured out how to do design. They've definitely figured out design, the new voice mode. Okay, this is cool. Let's see. Can you put this image in background? Image is larger. Whoa, 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 what do you mean? Let's try saving it. Save image as 00 and let's see if we can attach this photo. Attach. Whoa, whoa, whoa. What happened? Oh, V0 is stuck. Wait, what just happened? Okay. Attach. Upload from photo. Let's see. Uploading. Can you put this image in background? Can you do it? Let's see. Surreal sci-fi scene. Let's go, let's go, let's go. Make it happen. Make it happen. Yes. Wow. Wow. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Update the text to am I living in a simulation? Dun, dun, dun. Okay, let's see. Whoa, 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 whoa. Automatically try to figure out the best button. Wow, wow, wow. Then you click over here and you go here. Perfect. Let's deploy this stuff. I don't even know what deploy means. Let's see. Can you deploy? Set a custom domain. No custom domain for now. Incorrect peer dependency. 1. Creating an optimized production build. Wow. This was cool. This was cool. Visit site. We have a site. Am I living in a simulation? Figure it out for yourself. Okay, let's post. V0 is cool. What happens if I post this? Do I get a link? Let's see. No. No. Okay. First V0. My first V0. This was cool. This was really cool. Imagine we just made a highly custom. Highly custom. Wait, where did it go? V0 is cool. It just disappeared. Whoa. What just happened? Where did our tweet go? Our tweet went into the abyss. V0 is cool. Let's maybe make this one the same. This was cool. This was really cool. I think Twitter does something. They hide your tweet if 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 you just start by linking someone. If you start by tagging someone, sorry. Verso V0 is cool. And then we can post the link. Let's see. Okay. Very interesting. Very interesting. We basically made a quick app. Really cool. Memory seems to be no more stringent constraint than processing power. Moreover, since the maximum human sensory bandwidth is 10 to the power 8 bits per second, simulating all sensory events incurs a negligible cost compared to simulating the cortical activity. We can therefore use the processing power required to simulate the central nervous system as an estimate of the total computational cost of simulating a human mind. If the environment is included in the simulation, this will require additional computing power. How much depends on the scope and granularity of the simulation. Simulating the entire universe down to the quantum level is obviously infeasible unless radically new physics is discovered, but in order to get a realistic simulation of human experience, much less is needed. Only whatever is required to ensure that the simulated humans interacting in normal human ways with their simulated environment don't notice any irregularities. The microscopic structure of the inside of the Earth can be safely omitted. Distant astronomical objects can have highly compressed representations. This is very interesting. But yeah, that's the stream. This was a really good read, and we built something.